everybody, welcome back to the author dyslexic read of the book Fairies of Elysium. Chapter 3, Castle Life. To me, living in a large space was strange and unnerving. The castle seemed bleak, cold, and very unlike home. I was used to a small space where no family member could have privacy. I came from a small cottage, built upon dirt and warmed with a fire in the winter. At every turn I would have my family near. Now I was hidden amongst stone walls and kept as a prisoner in a place that I was now expected to call home. I would spend many of my days trying to familiarize myself with the many rooms. The hallways were wide and cold. Often eerie sounds made by the wind could be heard whispering through. My imagination seemed too often to get the better of me when I hear the strange noises permeate the dark night. John liked the nights when I was afraid because he wanted me to want him close. I felt awkward and foolish each time I would jump from hearing a strange sound. John assured me that, after time, I would feel at home in the castle. Although I never had the courage to tell him, I knew in my heart that this place could never be home. The huge spiral stairs in the castle were horrible to climb. The castle was not a big stone construction. Those came later to Scotland. Instead, it was a large tower house. It was an autonomous unit, square in shape, with only one entrance at the bottom. The door could only be reached by means of a ladder or a movable staircase. John did not have a wall built around the tower for protection. He also added a gate to hinder people from coming in. If one got past the gate, he would still have to find the ladder or movable staircase to reach the tower door. I felt that the high door and castle gate not only served to keep people out, but also to keep me in the castle. The kitchen occupied the whole first floor and was adjoined by the banquet hall. The private chambers, or apartments, were located above the kitchen on the second floor. The reception room was on the top floor. Every level was linked by the grand staircase to the right-hand side of the tower. The staircase was on only one side of the tower, which meant that one would have to walk all the way from one side to the other when trying to get to a room. I was thankful that my chambers were only on the second floor and not the third. The basement held the cellar and the dungeon. A large chimney occupied one side of the tower, which smoked all day from the various fires in the kitchen and apartments. The entire castle was constructed of red granite. Life was very different. Living as a member of royalty meant not having to work. I often looked at the many servants swarming about, waiting on us hand and foot, and the thought occurred to me that living as royalty was a waste of life. It seemed to me that although I was now in a position to have whatever I wanted, I was no longer free to better myself. I no longer had to use my talents for the good of making life easier, nor did I have to use my imagination. Everything that I wanted as far as material objects were at my willing dispense. Each day in the castle brought a huge feast. Around midday, a huge meal would be prepared. Often the meat was pork, lamb, or chicken. In addition, there would be soup, potatoes, nuts, fruit, and whatever was available at that time of year. I ate at that head table while I gazed down upon the social elite. I was given harsh stares by the women who saw me only as a commoner. I did not care what they thought of me, as long as I was left alone. Making friends amongst His Majesty's people was not an option for me. I was open to greeting them as it was in my nature, even if it had not become my duty. I was turned away with bouts of snobbery. When John excused himself to talk with the gentleman, I was caught off guard by a swarm of ladies. At first I thought that they had approached me to offer words of comfort, for surely they had to know my ordeal. I felt a sudden warm feeling come over me. I thought I was being accepted. I found myself surrounded by 5 women, and my warm feeling quickly turned to nervousness. The women began to sneer and jeer at me. I already felt the part of the outsider, but this meeting with these women surely let me know that I was undoubtedly not welcome. "'Tis the maid of the castle now," said the first woman. She was older, with wrinkles beginning to show her age. She talked about me to the other women as if I were not there, or as if I were only a statue to gawk at. "I, a maid with no more maidenhead, as she now warms the master's bed," the second woman cackled to the first. She was proud of the new rhyming chorus that she had made. Playfully she repeated it again, this time half singing it. They went around in a circle, throwing out remarks too fast for me to comprehend what they were saying. My brain was trying to pick apart every word to fully grasp the lewd comment. A maidenhead? What is she referring to? This was the second time I had heard that word, and I still did not know what it meant. I could only guess that it had something to do with the virtuous part of me that was no longer there. If the king were going to take this one to his bed, so be it. But surely he could have thrown the fish back. She is rather small, the third woman said sarcastically. "'Tis amazing that the manhood could even become large with the likeness of this skinny one. I do say she carries some bodice, though. Hair upon her head, it's lengthy, but she hath the face of a child." "Do not forget the wits of a child." "No, we must not forget that. Quite right, Mary. Soon this fish will stay here until she grows into a lady. Soon after she becomes a gentlewoman, he will throw her back. When the boredom strikes, he will find a new one to teach his charms to." I stood in the center of these women as they continued to judge me and harp on me. They scrutinized my body, which I had thought beautiful up until that point. I did not see myself as a child, but a woman of 15, who was old enough to be married to the man I loved. My throat began to feel hard, as if I had swallowed a stone, and my eyes began to well up with salty tears. These women were mean, and had a severe lack of Christian compassion. I continued to stand there as the humiliation began to set in. I was already ashamed of what I had been made to do with a man who was not my husband. The commentary from these relentless women went on for minutes. I looked over their shoulders with wet and mournful eyes to try to spot John. Although this man was my captor, he was also my protector while I resided in this strange domain. Finally, I spotted John talking with one of the gentlemen. His eyes met mine, and I asked for his help by my pleading glance. Abruptly, he cut off the man that he was talking to and bolted to my rescue. John came up to the circle surrounding me and broke through them to stand at my side. His face became red, for it was obvious to him what was happening. Tears ran down my face as silently I told myself, "Speak up, defend thyself." The musicians put down their instruments to give way for the for the showdown that was surely coming. The king had been known to offer unusual punishment for his subjects that disobeyed. However, these were women, and most of his punishments were reserved for men. To give punishment to a woman, especially one in high standing, was to show that must be witnessed by all. All who watched the drama unfold knew they would be seeing something new if the woman were punished. Most hoped the king would not choose execution. In the past, King John was fond of beheading a man for the simplest of crimes. One man was promptly beheaded for not cleaning up after his dog voided his bowels in front of the castle gate. What of this mockery? When offending this lady of my house, you have offended your king. Guards, take these disgusting women out of my castle. Once they are outside, strip them of their head coverings, and chop off the hair upon their heads. As the king spoke, his voice echoed through the room of the banquet hall. The people who were eating stopped to listen to the furious voice that thundered from the floor to the ceiling. The guards quickly escorted the women to their fate. The women scarcely had time to cry before they were taken out. The men with whom they had come, presumably their husbands, did not dare to follow their wives. Instead, they stood in their respective places, where they were safe from the king's wrath. There, my dear, let no talk from those idle tongues enter your mind. Come, dance with me. Musicians, play! The royal musicians held their instruments tightly. These instruments were rarely seen by commoners, but only those who were royal or lucky enough to attend a royal function. The instrument of medieval bards and kings was the larch, a Celtic harp. The traditional bagpipes and drum were played, breathing rhythm into even the most non-musical person. John extended his hand as he bowed to me. I wiped my tears with the cuff on my dress. I stood there, not knowing what to do. I did not want to disappoint the king, and I was eager to change the subject to something more upbeat. However, I did not know how to dance. I felt my armpits, neck, and forehead begin to sweat. I started to feel another wave of embarrassment surge through me. All eyes were on me, and I did not know what to do. John stood with his hand raised, waiting for my grasp. He slowly lifted his head and dropped his hand. I stood there, gazing into his eyes, which had a hint of embarrassment and rejection in them. Slowly, his body stood up straight. Every eye drilled down on me as the sweat continued to mount. I could not speak. I opened my mouth, but nothing would come out, not even a squeak. I felt ill. My stomach, I knew, would lose my noon meal if I continued to stand there. I could feel the blood drain from my face, and my stomach started to hurt. As luck had it, John noticed the ill look upon my face. "My dear, you may retire to your chambers." "Maria! Maria, take my lady to her chambers and undress her. Bathe her and put her to bed. This day's been most tiring for her." Maria came willingly, and wrapped her arm around my waist. She was able to free me from my embarrassment. Maria was so gentle. I was ashamed to let her see my body, and I asked that I might bathe myself. The tub was a hollowed block of wood, shaped into a large bowl and lined with material to prevent splinters. Maria understood that I was a modest maiden, and left me to myself after pouring in the last of the hot water. As I sat, soaking in the warm water, I thought of my former life as a simple commoner. I never had to feel embarrassed, ashamed, or unwanted. I was fully welcomed by all in my village. This life will never be for me. My God, please rescue me.